Hi, this is Shopping with the Devil. This is video number 5, and the topic of this one is shelter. So I did a video about food, and then I did one on water and clothing. So now this one's addressing shelter. I'm huge on just talking about the basic necessities. So if you are struggling financially, the question you need to ask is like, can I breathe without it? And if you can breathe without something, you don't need it. Save your money for something that you do need, like shelter. So there are tons of different shelters out there. Society tells us, I feel like, that we need like a house. You and your spouse and your kids need a house for yourself, and that's like, that means you're living a pretty good life if that's what you have. But reality is that there are tons of other viable options for survival. Like if you are just trying to live another day, you absolutely do not need a house. So there are, and the other aspect of this is the laws that there are depending on what country you're in. And in the United States, there are laws that do say like you have to have like electricity and plumbing, something like that, like for your permanent residence. So that could be tricky because if you're homeless, like, and especially if you have kids, like, you could be in trouble for, not providing some type of home that has like the plumbing and electricity and running water. In other countries, like, you can live in a hut and they're perfectly fine with that. But yeah, so I guess you just have to think about the laws in your country. And even with the laws, like, if you're in survival mode, like, sometimes you just have to do whatever, like, you get by with not following the law, because that will, like, might buy you another day or whatever. And then if they do get you, well, you're still gonna survive. Like, maybe you'll be in jail or something, but you're still gonna be living. So, I don't know. It's not really, like, ideal or anything, but my main idea is, like, how can you just keep breathing another day? So, yeah, like, shelter, you just find whatever shelter works in any given day. And even if it goes, like, against the law, sometimes that's what you have to do in certain situations. But anyway, so there's different shelters. There's, like, igloos, huts. You can get a 1-bedroom apartment. You could have, like, a family of 6, but just live in a 1-bedroom apartment. And that is, like, pretty luxurious compared to some ways that other people live around the world. And it's very doable. You have enough room for everyone to sleep. Everyone has a roof over their head. You don't have to worry about pests coming in. So really, if you need to save money, like, instead of having a big house, like, just have a 1-bedroom apartment for your family. You can get a studio apartment. There's trailer homes. You can camp in somebody's backyard, like if you have a family member, they've got extra land or whatever, just, like, ask them if you can camp on their yard. And if it's nice out, like summertime or whatever, like, that's a perfectly fine way to survive. People live in their cars. There's tiny homes. Some people live on boats. You could have multiple families in one house, so maybe you buy a house with some friends, and you each family, like, maybe it's a 3-bedroom house, and then each family just takes 1 bedroom for themselves, and the whole family just sleeps in the 1 bedroom. It's like, kind of packed, but you're surviving, right? So what do you really need? You don't need to have a whole house to yourself. The other thing is there's homeless shelters. If you need that, there's and then there's places that are open 24 hours, so, like, you could just, if you just need to get out of the cold or whatever, like, you go to a 24-hour place. So yeah, there's lots of different options. So even I really like the multi-family living, where you have multiple families in one house, because that's, at least where I am, like that's within the legal system. Like you're not breaking the law by doing that, but it's definitely way cheaper than each of those families having their own house. Plus, you're not as lonely. I feel like you have a little mini community. Obviously, there's, you might have some, different personalities that might clash, and that can be hard. But at the end of the day, like, you're all surviving and living. So to me, that is, like, that's kind of what matters. It's just that you can survive. And I guess if it got to the point where you're so clashing that it's might interfere with your survival, then now you have to, try to think of another option. But overall, I think that's a really great option. Yeah, be willing to move places that are cheaper, or even maybe you move somewhere because you have a good job there. There's lots of different like things and aspects to think about when you're trying to survive. You might want to think about the transportation, like the distance to get to your work or to get to a grocery store, and take that into account with wherever you live. Yeah, so that's another aspect. And healthcare. So I know this isn't really pertaining to housing, but healthcare costs a lot of money. Right now, I don't have healthcare because I feel like it costs too much money, and plus I don't have any major health problems that I know of, and so I'm taking the risk of just not paying for health insurance right now. And maybe that's something you want to think about too, because the healthcare really, it's kind of about, I think it's, for some people, is a similar price as what your housing is. So like half of your money from your work is like going to your housing, and the other half is going to your health insurance, it seems like. So maybe you want to think about, do I actually need health insurance? And maybe you have to take that risk of, like, what, if something happens to me, like, I guess we'll get there, or we'll find out what to do when we get there. But for right now, like for my survival right now, I can't afford health care. So maybe you just don't pay your health care. If you don't have any problems going on in your life right now, health-wise, then you might consider just going without health care so that you can, save your money for something else. I know it's like a risk, but for like the time being, that might be what you need to do in order to survive. So kind of have to think about that. So yeah, those are my ideas for shelter. Yeah, just thinking of, there's tons of other ways to live. Yeah, and you can always, I don't think I mentioned, camping. Yeah, you can always go camping, camp for free in somebody's backyard. Or, obviously you can always ask people if you can stay with them, depending on how close you are to them or how kind they are. That's also another option. But anyway, when you're struggling financially, don't put yourself into a box. Like, think about all these other options, other ways that you can configure your life so that you can survive bare minimally. Water, food, shelter, and clothing. Those are the things you need to focus on. Everything else is an extra. And yeah, so that's just my message about shelters, and I'll have some more videos coming up. Thanks.